Hello guys, Dr. Spooks here. If you enjoy my videos, please click the like button. It's the only way YouTube's algorithm really notices me. I would be very grateful to you. Yellowstone National Park stretched endlessly before Alex and Emily, its rugged beauty unmatched. Alex adjusted the strap of his rifle slung across his back, glancing at Emily, who was squinting at the map. "Should be another mile to the lake," she said with a confident nod, tucking a strand of blonde hair under her baseball cap. She carried a small backpack, more interested in taking photos than survival gear, leaving Alex to bring the essentials and the firepower. They'd left the ranger station earlier that morning, brushing off the park ranger's ominous words. "A lot of folks going missing out here lately," the man had said, his weathered face serious. "We've even had Bigfoot sightings in the area." Alex had laughed outright, earning a glare from Emily. "Bigfoot? Really?" The ranger didn't smile. "Say what you want, but you'll see the signs if you're not careful. Stick to the marked trails." "We'll be fine," Alex had replied, his voice brimming with bravado. Emily thanked the ranger politely, though she couldn't resist a scoff once they were out of earshot. "Bigfoot, huh?" she teased as they hiked. "Maybe we'll get a selfie with him." "Only if he poses nice," Alex said, patting his rifle. "Otherwise, he's just another trophy." Now, hours into the trail, the humor had worn off. The pristine wilderness felt quieter than it should, with only the rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of birds breaking the silence. Alex noticed the lack of small animals. No squirrels darting across the path, no deer grazing in the distance. "You notice how quiet it is?" he asked, scanning the dense forest around them. Emily shrugged. "Just peaceful. Isn't that why we're here?" Alex didn't answer, his instincts tingling. He wasn't superstitious, but years of hunting had taught him to trust the unease creeping up his spine. His boots crunched over dried leaves as they rounded a bend, where a large footprint caught his eye. "Hold up," he said, kneeling to inspect it. The print was massive, nearly twice the size of his own boot, with deep impressions suggesting something incredibly heavy. "Bear?" Emily guessed, leaning in. "Maybe," Alex muttered, but the toes were oddly human-like, and the spacing was wrong for a bear. He didn't want to spook her, so he stood and shrugged it off. "Probably just a weird print." As they continued, Alex kept his senses sharp. A low growl carried faintly on the wind, making him pause. "Did you hear that?" he asked. Emily frowned. "No, you're just trying to scare me." Alex shook his head, his grip tightening on his rifle. He scanned the tree line but saw nothing. The growl didn't come again, and Emily urged him forward, dismissing his concerns. But as they walked, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching them. The trail narrowed as Alex and Emily pressed deeper into the forest. Shadows from towering pines stretched across the path, and the late afternoon sun began its descent. Emily pulled out her phone to snap a few pictures of the landscape, but Alex's focus remained sharp. He couldn't ignore the feeling of being watched. "We should make camp soon," Alex suggested, scanning the area for a flat spot. "It'll get dark fast out here." Emily nodded but stopped suddenly, pointing to the ground. "Look at that!" Alex followed her gaze. Another footprint, massive, deep, and unmistakably fresh. This one wasn't alone. A series of similar prints trailed off into the forest. His hunting instincts kicked in, and he knelt to examine them closer. "These are too big for any bear," he muttered. "And they're not clawed. It's weird." "Could it be a prank?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with unease. "Not likely, too remote for that." He stood, his jaw tightening. "Let's just stay alert." As they continued, other unsettling signs emerged. Branches snapped unnaturally high off the ground, as if something tall and powerful had passed through. Large swaths of bark had been stripped from trees, leaving claw-like marks. Emily started taking fewer pictures, her earlier excitement dimming. A strange sound made them both freeze, a distant cracking of wood, like a tree being snapped in half. Alex's hand instinctively went to the rifle slung across his shoulder. "What was that?" Emily whispered. "Could be a falling tree," Alex said, though he didn't believe his own words. The sound was deliberate, as if something had broken the wood with force. The tension between them was palpable as they found a small clearing to set up camp. Alex busied himself with building a fire while Emily unpacked their gear. Despite his calm demeanor, he couldn't shake the sense that they were being stalked. As night fell, the forest grew unnervingly quiet. The usual sounds of nocturnal wildlife, crickets, owls, rustling leaves, were absent. Emily sat close to the fire, her back to Alex, as he cooked a small meal of canned stew over the flames. "Do you think those stories are true?" she asked, breaking the silence. "What stories?" Alex replied, keeping his voice steady. "Bigfoot, missing hikers, all that stuff the ranger said." Alex smirked. "Come on, it's just a bunch of campfire tales to scare people. Nothing we can't handle." Before Emily could respond, a loud snap echoed from the darkness beyond their firelight. Both of them froze, their heads whipping toward the sound. Alex grabbed his rifle and stood, his heart pounding. "Probably an animal," he whispered. "Stay by the fire." He stepped cautiously toward the edge of the clearing, the rifle raised. The firelight didn't reach far, and the forest beyond was an inky black. Another snap, closer this time, made him stop. "Alex," Emily called softly, her voice trembling. "What is it?" "I don't know," he replied, his grip tightening on the rifle. But deep down, he had a sinking feeling that whatever was out there wasn't an ordinary animal. Alex's breath hung in the cold air as he peered into the darkness, his rifle steady against his shoulder. The fire behind him cast long shadows that seemed to dance at the edge of the clearing. Every nerve in his body screamed for him to stay alert. Whatever had made that sound was close. "Stay by the fire," he whispered again, glancing back at Emily. She nodded, her face pale as she gripped a flashlight tightly. The forest felt alive, but not in the way it should. It was as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, watching. Another crack came, this time to Alex's left. He pivoted smoothly, the barrel of his rifle pointing toward the source. And then he saw it. A figure loomed just beyond the fire's reach. It was massive, at least 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and an impossibly large frame. Coarse, dark fur covered its body, and its glowing yellow eyes pierced the shadows. Alex's stomach twisted as he realized it was staring directly at him. "Emily," he said in a low, controlled voice, "get behind me." "What is it?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Just do it." Emily scrambled to her feet, clutching the flashlight. The beam of light shook as she pointed it toward the figure. The creature didn't flinch or retreat. Instead, it stepped forward, its heavy footfall making the ground tremble. "Holy!" Emily gasped, her words cutting off as the flashlight illuminated the creature fully. The thing resembled a man in shape, but was entirely inhuman. Its thick, matted fur and elongated arms gave it an almost primal appearance. Its mouth opened slightly, revealing large, flat teeth that seemed ill-suited for anything but crushing. Alex didn't hesitate. He pulled the trigger, the rifle's deafening crack shattering the silence. The bullet hit the creature square in the chest, but instead of falling, it stumbled back with a grunt, more surprised than hurt. "Run!" Alex shouted, grabbing Emily's arm. They bolted toward the opposite end of the clearing, their gear forgotten. Behind them, the creature let out a guttural roar, an earth-shaking sound that sent chills down Alex's spine. More than the roar, though, what terrified him was the echo. A second, then a third roar, answering from different directions. "There's more of them," Alex yelled, adrenaline surging through his veins. He tightened his grip on Emily's arm as they plunged into the forest. Branches whipped at their faces, and the undergrowth snagged their boots, but they didn't stop. The creature's heavy footsteps pounded behind them, accompanied by growls and guttural noises that sounded eerily like a language. Emily stumbled, nearly falling, but Alex yanked her upright. "Keep going," he barked, his voice hard. They burst into a small ravine, the walls offering a brief sense of cover. Alex spun, rifle raised, and aimed toward the noise. The shadows shifted as one of the creatures barreled into view. This time, he didn't aim for the chest. The shot rang out and the creature's leg buckled. It howled in pain, collapsing momentarily before dragging itself back upright. Alex's heart sank. These things were relentless. "Move!" he shouted, pulling Emily along. The realization hit him like a freight train. They weren't being hunted. They were being herded. The forest seemed to close in around them as Alex and Emily ran, their breaths ragged and labored. The guttural sounds of the creatures echoed from every direction, making it impossible to tell where they were coming from. The realization that they were being herded, not chased, gnawed at Alex's mind. These creatures weren't just animals, they were organized. Emily stumbled again, catching herself against a tree. "Alex, I can't," she panted, tears streaming down her face. "I can't keep running." Alex stopped, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. His own heart was hammering, but he knew they couldn't afford to stop for long. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "We'll get through this. We just need to stay smart and stick together." He scanned their surroundings, the rifle in his hands feeling heavier by the second. The ravine offered a brief respite, with its steep walls forcing any pursuers to approach from one direction. Alex decided to make a stand. "Over here," he said, guiding Emily to a large fallen tree. "We'll use this as cover." Emily dropped behind the log, gripping her flashlight like a weapon. Alex knelt beside her, his rifle aimed toward the darkened trail they had just fled. His other hand reached for his revolver, which he placed within easy reach. The forest fell silent again, too silent. Alex's finger hovered over the trigger as his eyes darted between the trees. He strained to hear anything, a footstep, a growl, the snap of a branch, but all he could hear was the sound of his own breathing and Emily's quiet sobs. Then, from the shadows, a shape moved. "Stay down," Alex whispered, tightening his grip on the rifle. His heart raced as he spotted one of the creatures emerge from the trees, its massive form silhouetted against the faint moonlight. It moved cautiously, its head swiveling as if sniffing the air. Alex aimed for the head this time. He held his breath, steadied his aim, and fired. The crack of the rifle shattered the stillness. The creature recoiled, a spray of blood visible even in the dim light. It fell to the ground with a heavy thud, motionless. Before Alex could feel any sense of victory, another roar erupted from deeper in the forest. Two more creatures emerged, their movements faster and more aggressive than before. They charged, their eyes glowing with fury. Alex fired again, hitting one in the shoulder. The creature stumbled, but kept coming. He barely had time to grab his revolver as the second one closed in, its long arms reaching toward the log. "Emily, run!" he shouted, firing point blank into the creature's face. It fell backward with a howl, but Alex knew it wasn't over. Emily scrambled to her feet, but the path ahead was blocked by another figure. This one was even larger, its hulking frame almost blending with the shadows. It let out a low, menacing growl as it advanced. Alex stood between Emily and the creature, his rifle empty and his revolver half-loaded. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice steady despite the terror clawing at his chest. The creatures weren't just hunting them, they were toying with them. The enormous creature blocking their path moved slowly, deliberately, as though savoring their fear. Alex's revolver felt light in his hand, too light. 4 shots left, he thought grimly, and at least 3 of them are still standing. Emily clung to his arm, her trembling hand clutching the flashlight. The beam wavered across the creature's face, revealing jagged fur, deep-set eyes, and a wide, flat nose. Its lips curled back to reveal yellowed teeth, and it let out a guttural sound halfway between a growl and a snarl. "Stay calm," Alex whispered, his eyes darting for an escape route. But the other 2 creatures were flanking them, their massive forms visible through the trees. The pack had revealed itself. Alex fired at the closest one, the revolver's roar echoing through the ravine. The bullet struck its shoulder, causing it to reel back with a roar. It didn't go down but hesitated, giving Alex precious seconds. "Move!" he barked, grabbing Emily's arm and pulling her away from the log. They bolted up the ravine, their feet pounding against the rocky ground. Behind them, the creatures let out deafening cries, their footsteps thundering in pursuit. Emily stumbled, falling hard against a rock. Alex turned back, grabbing her under the arm and hauling her upright. "Keep going," he urged. "I'm trying," she gasped, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. Her ankle throbbed, but adrenaline pushed her forward. The ravine opened into a dense thicket of trees, offering some cover. Alex led them deeper, weaving through the trunks and listening for the telltale sounds of pursuit. The growls and heavy footsteps were still close, too close. He motioned for Emily to crouch behind a large boulder, then turned to face the direction they'd come. Kneeling, he reloaded his revolver with practiced speed, the metallic clicks loud in the oppressive silence. One of the creatures emerged from the trees, its glowing eyes locking onto Alex. It charged, its massive arms swinging wildly. Alex aimed and fired, hitting it square in the chest. The creature staggered but didn't fall, its momentum carrying it forward. Come on, Alex muttered, taking another shot. This one hit the creature in the throat and it collapsed with a strangled cry. But before Alex could breathe a sigh of relief, another roar came from his left. The second creature was faster. It lunged before Alex could react, its claws swiping at his side. He threw himself backward, narrowly avoiding the blow, and fired blindly. The shot grazed the creature's arm, making it hesitate. Emily screamed as the third creature, the largest of the group, loomed behind the boulder. Its hand reached for her, but Alex was faster. He dove between them, firing the last round into its eye. The creature roared in pain, its hand slamming into Alex and knocking him to the ground. "Alex!" Emily cried, scrambling to pull him up. "Go!" he yelled, his voice hoarse. He pushed her ahead as the creatures regrouped, their furious roars shaking the forest. Alex and Emily raced deeper into the forest, their breaths ragged and desperate. The night seemed to press down on them, the darkness growing heavier with each step. Behind them, the creatures' guttural roars echoed, growing louder and more frenzied. They weren't giving up. "Alex, I can't keep going," Emily gasped, her ankle throbbing with each step. "You don't have a choice," Alex said, his voice hard but determined. He scanned the terrain for anything they could use, a vantage point, a hiding place, a weapon. His rifle was useless now, the ammunition spent, and his revolver was down to a single bullet. Up ahead, the land sloped upward, leading to a cluster of massive boulders. Alex grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her toward them. "We'll make a stand here." The boulders formed a natural barrier, leaving a narrow opening that Alex could defend. He positioned Emily behind the largest rock and handed her his hunting knife. "If anything gets past me, use this." Emily's hand shook as she took the blade. "What if—" "Don't think about that," Alex interrupted. "Just stay quiet and keep low." He turned back to the opening, revolver in hand. The first creature appeared moments later, its hulking frame illuminated by the faint moonlight. It paused at the edge of the clearing, sniffing the air, its yellow eyes scanning the rocks. Alex aimed carefully, waiting for it to step closer. The creature moved slowly, cautiously, as if it knew he was armed. Alex's finger tightened on the trigger, but he hesitated. One bullet wasn't enough to stop all of them. Then a second creature emerged, its movements quicker and more aggressive. It let out a sharp, guttural cry, and the first one charged. Alex fired, the shot hitting the charging creature in the leg. It stumbled but didn't stop, its massive arms swinging wildly as it closed the distance. Alex grabbed a jagged branch from the ground and swung it like a club, striking the creature across the head. It reeled back, stunned. The second creature leapt over the first, its claws aiming for Alex's throat. He ducked, driving the branch upward into its stomach with all his strength. The creature roared in pain but swiped at him, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Alex!" Emily screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos. The first creature recovered, its eyes blazing with fury as it lumbered toward Alex. He rolled to his feet, grabbing a rock and hurling it at the creature's face. The impact caused it to hesitate, buying him precious seconds. "Emily, run!" he shouted, his voice hoarse. But Emily didn't move. She gripped the knife tightly, her eyes wide with terror. The third creature appeared at the edge of the clearing, its massive form dwarfing the others. It let out a deafening roar, and the pack seemed to rally, their movements more coordinated, more deliberate. Alex stood between them and Emily, his hands empty but his resolve unshaken. "You're not taking her," he growled. The creatures advanced, their glowing eyes filled with a predatory hunger. Alex knew this was it. They had to fight or die. The fight felt endless, but Alex's raw determination and improvised weapons kept the creatures at bay just long enough for a sliver of opportunity to appear. Spotting a narrow cave entrance half hidden by dense underbrush nearby, Alex grabbed Emily's arm and pulled her toward it. "Inside now!" he barked, his voice leaving no room for argument. Emily ducked into the cave, her flashlight casting shaky beams across the rough walls. Alex followed, dragging a heavy branch to cover the entrance. He pressed his back against the rock, panting as the sounds of the creatures grew louder outside. "They'll find us," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "Maybe," Alex said, crouching to reload his revolver with the single bullet he had left. "But they won't get us easily." The cave smelled damp and earthy. its depths disappearing into inky blackness. Emily turned her flashlight forward, illuminating bones scattered across the floor. Some were old, weathered to the point of crumbling, but others were disturbingly fresh. Shreds of clothing clung to a few of them, remnants of hikers who had come before them. "Oh my God," Emily choked, stepping back. Alex's jaw tightened. "This is their den," he said grimly. "They've been bringing people here." The realization hit him like a gut punch. The creatures weren't just attacking at random, they were hunting systematically. The stories of missing hikers suddenly made terrible sense. These weren't the actions of animals driven by instinct. The creatures were calculating, ruthless predators. The pounding outside grew louder, and one of the creatures let out a low, guttural growl, followed by the sound of claws raking against stone. "Stay behind me," Alex said, his voice low but firm. He aimed the revolver at the entrance, ready to take down the first thing that came through. Emily gripped the knife, her knuckles white. "What do we do if they get in?" she whispered. Alex didn't answer. He didn't want to admit they had no plan beyond fighting until they couldn't anymore. The growls grew closer, and then a massive arm reached through the gap in the branches Alex had used to block the entrance. He fired, the shot echoing like thunder in the confined space. The arm jerked back, but the roaring outside only intensified. "They'll keep coming," Emily said, her voice breaking. "We'll hold them off as long as we can," Alex replied. But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. They were out of time, out of options, and nearly out of hope. A sudden sound from deeper in the cave made them both freeze. It wasn't the guttural growl of the creatures, but something far more unsettling, a low, rumbling noise that seemed to come from the depths of the earth itself. "What was that?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. Alex turned, his eyes narrowing as he peered into the darkness beyond the flashlight's reach. "I don't know," he said, his grip tightening on the revolver. "But I think we're not alone in here either." The low rumble from the cave's depths grew louder, reverberating through the confined space like the growl of some ancient beast. Alex's grip tightened on his revolver as his heart pounded in his chest. Whatever was in the cave wasn't part of their plan, and it was moving toward them. Emily aimed her flashlight into the darkness, her breathing shallow and uneven. The beam flickered over jagged walls and deep shadows, revealing nothing at first. Then, just as Alex began to relax, a pair of glowing yellow eyes reflected back at them. "No," Emily whispered, stumbling back. Another creature, larger than the ones outside, stepped into the flashlight's beam. Its fur was darker, its eyes more intelligent, and its massive frame blocked most of the cave tunnel. This wasn't just another member of the pack. It was their leader. "Stay behind me," Alex said, his voice firm despite the fear coursing through him. Before the creature could close the distance, the sounds of the pack outside grew frenzied. The branches blocking the entrance splintered as one of the creatures forced its way in. Alex spun, firing his last bullet into the intruder's chest. The creature staggered but didn't fall, its roars deafening in the confined space. "Move deeper into the cave," Alex shouted, grabbing Emily's arm. "But," she began, glancing toward the massive figure blocking the other end of the tunnel. "We don't have a choice," Alex snapped, dragging her past the fresh kill. The two sprinted into the depths of the cave, the flickering flashlight beam guiding them. The walls narrowed, forcing them to squeeze through tight gaps. Behind them, the leader followed, its guttural growls echoing ominously. The tunnel opened into a larger cavern, and Alex quickly assessed their surroundings. Jagged stalagmites jutted from the floor, and a small pool of water glistened in the dim light. It wasn't much, but it offered a chance to make a stand. "Get up there," Alex said, pointing to a raised ledge on the far side of the cavern. Emily climbed as fast as she could, using the natural footholds in the rock. Alex grabbed a sharp piece of stone from the ground, his makeshift weapon pitiful against the hulking figure emerging from the tunnel. The leader Bigfoot entered the cavern, its low growl resonating like a warning. It was followed by two more creatures, smaller, but no less menacing. Alex stood his ground, positioning himself between the monsters and Emily. "Come on, you bastards," he muttered, his knuckles white as he gripped the stone. The creatures advanced slowly, their glowing eyes fixed on him. One lunged, and Alex sidestepped, slashing at its arm. The stone tore through fur and flesh, eliciting a roar of pain. The second charged immediately after, and Alex struck again, aiming for its neck. The leader watched, its intelligent gaze calculating Alex's movements. It growled, and the two wounded creatures fell back, regrouping. Alex realized too late what was happening. They were baiting him, tiring him out. Above him, Emily screamed, pointing frantically. "Alex, behind you!" He turned just as the leader lunged, its massive hand closing around his arm. The force threw him to the ground, the stone clattering away. Alex struggled, kicking and punching, but the creature's strength was overwhelming. The leader's grip was crushing, its massive hand pinning Alex to the ground. His muscles strained as he fought against its immense strength, but it was like wrestling a force of nature. The creature snarled, its glowing eyes filled with malice as it leaned closer. "Let him go!" Emily's voice rang out from above. Alex turned his head just in time to see her holding a jagged rock over her head. With all her strength, she hurled it at the leader. The rock struck the creature square in the temple, and it roared in pain, its grip momentarily loosening. Alex didn't waste a second. He grabbed a sharp piece of debris from the ground and drove it into the creature's hand. It let out a guttural howl and released him, staggering backward. "Emily, jump down," Alex shouted, scrambling to his feet. Without hesitation, Emily leapt from the ledge, landing hard beside Alex. Her flashlight clattered to the ground but miraculously stayed on, its beam illuminating the chaotic scene. The other two creatures hesitated, clearly wary of their wounded leader. "We need to go," Emily yelled, clutching Alex's arm. "No arguments here," Alex muttered, grabbing the flashlight and leading her toward the far side of the cavern. His mind raced as he scanned for an exit. Knowing the creatures wouldn't hesitate for long, a narrow crevice caught his eye, a small opening in the rock that looked just wide enough for them to squeeze through. "Over there," he said, pointing. The leader roared again, regaining its footing. Blood dripped from the wound in its hand, but its fury seemed to override its pain. It charged, its massive frame shaking the ground beneath them. Alex shoved Emily toward the crevice. "Go, I'll hold them off." "I'm not leaving you," she protested, but Alex gave her a firm push. "Move," he barked, turning to face the charging creature. Armed with nothing but his fists and the flashlight, Alex braced himself. The leader lunged, its claws swiping inches from his face. He ducked, swinging the flashlight with all his strength. The beam shattered on impact, plunging the cavern into near darkness, but the blow bought him enough time to dive toward the crevice. Emily was already halfway through, her hands clawing at the jagged rock as she pulled herself forward. Alex followed, squeezing into the tight space just as the leader slammed into the opening behind him. Its massive arms reached in, claws scraping against the rock, but it couldn't fit. "Keep going," Alex urged, the sound of his voice bouncing off the narrow walls. The two crawled through the tunnel, the creature's enraged growls echoing behind them. Sharp rocks tore at their clothes and skin, but they didn't stop. Adrenaline pushed them forward, their only thought being to escape. Finally, they emerged into the open air. The first light of dawn painted the forest in soft hues, a stark contrast to the nightmare they'd just endured. Alex helped Emily to her feet, both of them bleeding and gasping for breath. Behind them, the growls faded, replaced by an eerie silence. The creatures weren't following. "We made it," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. Alex nodded, his eyes scanning the forest. "For now," he said, his voice grim, "let's find help before they change their minds." The sun climbed higher as Alex and Emily stumbled through the forest, their steps uneven and unsteady. Every crack of a branch or rustle of leaves sent a jolt of adrenaline through them, but the creatures didn't reappear. Still, Alex kept Emily close, his eyes scanning every shadow. "We need to find a ranger station," Alex said, his voice hoarse. "They have to believe us." Emily didn't respond, her face pale and streaked with dirt and tears. Her ankle throbbed with each step, but she didn't complain. Survival was the only thing keeping her moving. Hours passed, and the forest began to thin. A dirt road appeared in the distance, the sight of it filling them with a flicker of hope. Alex quickened his pace, his arm steadying Emily as they moved toward it. Soon the sound of an approaching vehicle reached their ears. A park ranger's truck rounded the bend and Alex flagged it down, waving his arms frantically. The truck screeched to a halt, and a ranger stepped out, his expression shifting from annoyance to alarm as he took in their disheveled appearance. "Are you two okay?" the ranger asked, rushing toward them. "We were attacked," Alex said, his voice firm despite his exhaustion. "There are creatures out there. They killed hikers. We barely escaped." The ranger's brows furrowed. "Creatures? What are you talking about?" Emily grabbed the ranger's arm, her eyes wide with desperation. "They're real. They're huge and they're smart. You have to do something." The ranger hesitated, clearly skeptical. "Let's get you both to the station. You look like you've been through hell." Inside the truck, Alex and Emily recounted their ordeal as best they could. The ranger listened, his expression unreadable. But when Alex mentioned the cave and the remains they'd seen, the man's face darkened. "We've had reports of missing hikers in that area," he admitted. "Search teams went out but found nothing. If what you're saying is true, this changes everything." "It's true," Alex said firmly. "They're out there and they're hunting people." When they arrived at the station, a team of medics examined them while the ranger made calls. Alex could hear fragments of the conversation, mentions of search teams, restricted areas, and containment protocols. It was clear their story wasn't being dismissed outright. As the day wore on, Alex and Emily sat in the station, their wounds bandaged and their nerves frayed. Emily leaned against Alex, her head on his shoulder. "Do you think they'll do anything about it?" she asked quietly. Alex hesitated, staring out the window at the dense forest. "I don't know," he admitted. "But if they don't, someone else will disappear. Maybe a lot of someone else's." The ranger returned, his face serious. "We're organizing a search team to investigate the cave. You've done all you can. For now, get some rest." But rest didn't come easy. As Alex and Emily prepared to leave the park, the weight of what they'd seen lingered. Every shadow in the trees seemed to hold a threat, and every sound made them flinch. Driving away from Yellowstone, Emily glanced back at the towering pines, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think they'll stop?" Alex gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "Not unless someone makes them." The road stretched ahead, but the forest behind them felt alive, watching, waiting. They had escaped, for now, but Alex knew the creatures were still out there and they wouldn't stop hunting. Not ever. So a few weeks ago, my friend Josh thought it would be hilarious to prank me by hiring a maid from a sketchy website on the dark web. What started as a joke quickly turned into something really creepy. Here's what went down. It all started on a typical Friday night. Josh and I were hanging out at my place, playing video games and having a few beers. We were talking about the weird stuff you can find on the dark web. Josh, always the prankster, suddenly had this crazy idea. "Hey, what if we hired one of those creepy maids to come to your house?" he said, grinning like an idiot. At first, I laughed it off. Who in their right mind would actually do that? But Josh was persistent. He pulled out his laptop, accessed the dark web, and within minutes he found a site offering all sorts of services. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie, with low-res photos of people in creepy maid outfits and weird descriptions. Against my better judgment, I agreed to let him proceed, thinking it would be nothing more than a funny story to tell later. Josh clicked around and finally settled on a maid named Eliza. Her profile picture was a blurry black and white photo of a woman in an old-fashioned maid outfit, complete with a bonnet and apron. The description was vague, promising an unforgettable experience, and housekeeping with a twist. Josh, laughing uncontrollably, entered my address and scheduled her for the next evening. "You're gonna love this, man," he said, still chuckling. The next day I woke up with a slight hangover and a sense of unease about what we had done. I almost called Josh to cancel, but my curiosity got the better of me. As the day went on, I tried to distract myself with chores and errands, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to regret this prank. By 8 p.m., I was a bundle of nerves. I kept glancing out the window, expecting some creepy woman to appear at any moment. Just as I was about to text Josh and tell him I couldn't go through with it, the doorbell rang. My heart leaped into my throat. I took a deep breath, trying to convince myself it was just a joke, and opened the door. Standing on my porch was Eliza. She looked exactly like her photo, but seeing her in person was unnerving. She was tall, with a gaunt face and hollow eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. Her maid outfit looked old and tattered, like something out of a Victorian-era drama. She didn't say a word, just stared at me with an unsettling intensity. Hi, I stammered, feeling more and more uncomfortable by the second. Come in, I guess. Eliza stepped inside, her movements slow and deliberate. As she walked past me, I caught a whiff of something foul, like rotting meat. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was all part of the act. She made her way to the living room and I followed, not quite sure what to do next. For a moment, we just stood there in awkward silence. Then, without warning, Eliza began to hum softly. The tune was familiar, but I couldn't place it. She started dusting the shelves, her movements precise and almost mechanical. The whole scene felt surreal, like I was watching a ghost perform a mundane task. As she worked, I noticed strange things about her. Her skin was pale, almost see-through, and her hands were covered in scars. Her eyes never seemed to blink, and she moved with an eerie grace that made my skin crawl. I tried to strike up a conversation to break the tension. So, Eliza, how long have you been doing this? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. She paused, turning to look at me with those empty eyes. Long enough, she replied in a voice that sent chills down my spine. I laughed nervously, not sure how to respond. Well, you're doing a great job, I said, hoping to lighten the mood. Eliza didn't reply. She just went back to her humming and dusting, her presence filling the room with an oppressive sense of dread. I tried to distract myself by checking my phone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. After about an hour, Eliza finished her tasks and stood in the center of the room, staring at me. Is there anything else you require? She asked, her voice monotone and devoid of emotion. I shook my head, eager to get her out of my house. No, that's all. Thank you. Without another word, Eliza turned and walked out the door, leaving behind a trail of that sickening smell. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, my heart pounding in my chest. I texted Josh, telling him the prank was over and that he owed me big time. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Eliza's hollow eyes staring back at me. I kept hearing her humming that strange tune, and the smell of rot seemed to linger in my nostrils. I told myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew something was off. The next morning, I woke up feeling exhausted. I decided to clean the house, hoping it would help me shake off the unease from the night before. As I started tidying up the living room, I noticed something strange. There were scratches on the walls, long and deep, as if someone had dragged their nails across the plaster. I hadn't seen them the night before, and they hadn't been there before Eliza's visit. I called Josh, trying to keep my voice steady. Dude, this prank has gone too far. There are scratches on my walls and I can't get rid of that smell. Josh laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. Relax, man. It's probably just your imagination. She was just a creepy maid, right? I wanted to believe him, but as the day went on, more strange things started happening. I kept finding small objects out of place, like my keys in the freezer or the TV remote in the bathroom. I started hearing faint whispers at night, just on the edge of my hearing, and the smell of rot grew stronger. By the end of the week, I was a wreck. I hadn't slept properly since Eliza's visit, and my nerves were frayed. I decided to do some research on the website Josh had used, hoping to find some explanation for what was happening. What I found only made things worse. The site was filled with horror stories from people who had hired maids from the same service. They all described similar experiences, strange smells, objects moving on their own, and a growing sense of dread. Some even claimed to have seen the maids' faces change, becoming twisted and monstrous. I called Josh again, this time on the verge of panic. We need to figure out how to undo this. I can't take it anymore. Josh, now equally freaked out, agreed to come over and help me find a solution. When he arrived, we sat down and tried to come up with a plan. We decided to call the number listed on the website, hoping to get some answers. A woman answered, her voice cold and distant. "How may I assist you?" I explained what had happened, my voice shaking. "We hired a maid named Eliza, and ever since she left, strange things have been happening. We need to know how to stop it." There was a long pause before the woman replied. "I'm sorry, but once a service is rendered, it cannot be undone. You will have to deal with the consequences." I felt a wave of despair wash over me. "What do you mean, consequences?" The woman sighed. "Eliza is not just a maid. She is a conduit. She opens a door, and once that door is open, it cannot be closed." I hung up the phone, feeling more hopeless than ever. Josh and I sat in silence, the weight of the situation sinking in. We had unleashed something we couldn't control, and now we had to find a way to survive it. That's when we heard the humming. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, filling the room with its eerie melody. The smell of rot intensified, and the air grew cold. Josh and I exchanged terrified looks, realizing that Eliza was not done with us, and that's how it all began. I know this sounds insane, but every word is true. I'll update you with what happened next in part 2. For now, I just needed to get this out there. Maybe someone can help us figure out what to do. If you have any ideas, please let me know. Hey again, Reddit. So things have gotten worse since I last posted. Here's what happened next, and it's really freaking me out. About a week after Eliza's creepy visit, I had a late night at work. I got home around midnight, feeling super tired. The house was dark and weirdly quiet. I turned on the lights and immediately knew something was wrong. The air felt cold, and that awful rotten smell was back, stronger than ever. I walked into the living room and almost had a heart attack. Every mirror in my house was shattered. There were tiny glass pieces all over the floor, sparkling under the lights. My heart was racing as I tried to figure out what the hell was going on. Then I saw it. The note. It was pinned to the wall with a piece of shattered glass. The note read, "I will shatter you like these mirrors. You can run and hide, but you are and will always be in my sight." Below the message was a creepy pentagram drawn in what looked like dried blood. I freaked out and called Josh immediately. My hands were shaking so much I could barely dial his number. "Dude, get over here right now," I said as soon as he picked up. Josh arrived pretty fast. As soon as he saw the mess, he went pale. "What the hell happened here?" he asked, sounding just as scared as I felt. I handed him the note. This is what happened." Josh read it and swore. "This isn't a joke anymore. This is seriously messed up." We spent the next hour cleaning up the glass and trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every shadow seemed to move, and every creak in the house made me jump. After we cleaned up, we sat down to come up with a plan. "Maybe we should get out of here for a while," Josh suggested. "Go stay at a hotel or something." I nodded, desperate for any solution. "Yeah, maybe you're right." We packed a few things and headed to the nearest hotel. But even there, I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. I barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts of Eliza and the note. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Josh stayed with me, and we spent the day searching for any way to fix this. We found forums where people shared similar experiences, but no real solutions. That evening, as we sat in the hotel room, the humming started again. It was faint, but unmistakable. Josh and I looked at each other, both terrified. "We need to find someone who knows more about this stuff," Josh said. "Maybe a paranormal expert or something." I agreed, even though it felt ridiculous. But at this point, I was willing to try anything. We spent the rest of the night searching online for anyone who could help. We found a local paranormal investigator named Sarah who seemed legit. We contacted her and set up a meeting for the next day, so that's where we're at now. I'll update you all with what happens next. I just hope Sarah can help us before things get any worse. If you have any ideas or advice, please share. I'm desperate for anything that might help. Hey Reddit. So I'm back with another update, and things are getting really bad. I'm not sure what to do anymore. So Josh and I met with the paranormal investigator, Sarah. She came over to the hotel where we were staying. Sarah seemed professional and had all the gear you'd expect: EMF meters, cameras, and some other stuff I didn't recognize. She asked a lot of questions and did her thing around the hotel room and back at my house. After a few hours, Sarah sat us down and said she couldn't find any definitive evidence of paranormal activity. She suggested some typical stuff like cleansing rituals and putting salt around the house, but nothing specific to our situation. Josh and I were disappointed, but we thanked her and decided to try her suggestions anyway. A few days later, nothing had improved. The strange smells, the sense of being watched, and the random, creepy happenings continued. I was barely sleeping, constantly on edge. Then one night I had the worst nightmare of my life. In the nightmare, I was back in my house. Everything was dark and I could hear that same eerie humming from Eliza. Suddenly she appeared, holding a large knife. Her hollow eyes were locked onto mine, and she started chasing me through the house. I was running for my life, but it felt so real, like I was actually there. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, and couldn't shake the feeling of her presence. The very next day, the nightmare came true. I was alone at home, trying to relax and watch some TV, when I heard that humming again. My blood ran cold. I got up to investigate, and that's when I saw her. Eliza was standing in my hallway holding a knife just like in my dream. Panic set in and I ran for the door. Eliza chased me, her footsteps heavy and deliberate. I barely managed to unlock the door and get outside, slamming it behind me. I didn't stop running until I reached a neighbor's house. I pounded on their door, out of breath and terrified. They let me in and called the police. When the police arrived, they searched my house but found nothing. No sign of Eliza, no knife, nothing. They probably thought I was losing it, but I know what I saw. I stayed with my neighbor that night, too scared to go back home. Now I'm at a loss. The police can't help, and the paranormal investigator didn't find anything useful. I don't know what to do next. This has gone beyond a prank. Something real and dangerous is happening. If anyone has any advice or has gone through something similar, please let me know. I'm desperate for any help I can get. Hey Reddit, I'm back with another update. Things are still weird, but at least now I have some answers. After the police and the paranormal investigator couldn't help, I remembered my old buddy Tom. He's an investigator and detective. We hadn't talked in a while, but I figured he might be able to help. So I reached out to him and told him everything that happened. At first, Tom thought I was pulling his leg, but when he realized how scared I was, he took me seriously. He agreed to look into it. Tom did some digging, and he found out that Eliza isn't a ghost or anything supernatural. She's a real person, a psycho, but real. Her real name is Emily Carter. She's got a history of mental illness and has been involved in a lot of creepy stuff. She's been in and out of institutions and has a bunch of restraining orders against her. Tom said Emily is part of this underground group that does these twisted pranks and scare tactics for money. It's all illegal, but somehow they've been getting away with it. She uses different names and disguises to avoid getting caught. That's why she showed up as Eliza in that creepy maid outfit. Knowing she's not a ghost was a relief, but it didn't make her any less dangerous. Tom advised me to stay away from my house and let him handle it. He's working with the local authorities to track her down and arrest her. For now, I'm staying with Josh, trying to process all of this. It's still pretty scary, but at least I know what I'm dealing with. I'm just glad to have someone like Tom on my side. I'll keep you all updated with what happens next. Thanks for all the support and advice so far. It really means a lot. Hey Reddit, here's the final update. Things have finally settled down. After Tom and the police found out who Eliza really was, Emily Carter, they decided to set a trap for her. They came up with a plan to make it look like I was back home and alone. The police set up surveillance around my house and waited. I was staying at Josh's place, feeling super nervous but also hopeful. It didn't take long for Emily to show up. She came back to my house in her creepy maid outfit, probably thinking she was going to scare me again. The police were ready. They caught her as soon as she tried to get inside. Tom called me right away to tell me they had her. I felt such a huge sense of relief. Emily was taken into custody, and after a quick investigation, it was clear she needed serious help. The judge reviewed her case and, because of her history and what she did, decided to send her to a mental institution for a long time. I'm finally starting to feel safe again. I've moved back home, and the house doesn't feel as creepy anymore. It's been a crazy experience, but I'm glad it's over. Thanks to everyone for your support and advice. It really helped me get through this. Stay safe out there, Reddit. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be sharing something like this, but I need to talk about what's been happening to me. It's freaky and I'm honestly scared. So, a bit of background. My friend Mike has always been a prankster, the kind of guy who takes jokes way too far. I thought I knew what to expect from him, but this time he really crossed the line. It all started a couple of months ago. Mike and I were hanging out at his place, playing some video games, and drinking a few beers. Mike's recently gotten into browsing the dark web. He says it's just for kicks, to see what weird stuff people are into. He showed me some things: illegal items, weird services, and creepy forums. It was unsettling but kind of fascinating in a morbid way. Then Mike had this brilliant idea. He thought it would be hilarious to put a fake bounty on my head on one of those dark web hitman sites. He showed me the post he made, a blurry photo of me, my name, and a fake story about how I was some kind of dangerous snitch. The reward was $10,000. Mike laughed, saying it was all a joke and no one would take it seriously. He promised to take it down in a day. I laughed along, thinking it was just another one of his stupid pranks. A week later, I noticed a black van parked across the street from my house. At first, I didn't think much of it. It could have been anyone, right? But it was there every day, always in the same spot, engine running. I started to feel uneasy. Maybe it was just paranoia, but something felt off. Then things got weirder. I was walking home from work one evening and realized someone was following me. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. People walk in the same direction all the time, but this person matched my pace and stayed just far enough behind to not seem obvious. I took a detour through a crowded street, hoping to lose them, but when I looked back, they were still there. My heart was racing and I practically ran the last few blocks to my apartment. I locked the door and checked all the windows. Everything seemed normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The next day, I confronted Mike. I told him about the van and the person following me. He laughed it off, saying I was being paranoid and that no one from the dark web would actually come after me. But I could see he was a bit worried too. He promised to take the post down right away. I wanted to believe him, but the damage was already done. That night I heard noises outside my window. It sounded like someone moving around in the bushes. I peeked through the blinds and saw a shadowy figure standing near my front door. Panic set in, and I called the police. By the time they arrived, the person was gone. They took my statement but said there wasn't much they could do without evidence. They suggested I install security cameras and be more vigilant. Over the next few days, things got worse. I started receiving anonymous emails and texts, threats, warnings, and creepy photos of me taken without my knowledge. It was clear someone was watching me, tracking my every move. I couldn't sleep or eat, and my work performance suffered. My boss noticed and asked if everything was all right, but what could I say? Oh, just a dark web hitman out to get me because of a stupid joke my friend pulled. One night I heard a tapping noise at my window. I froze, my heart pounding. The tapping continued, slow and deliberate. Gathering all my courage, I pulled back the curtain. There was a note pressed against the glass. "We're watching you." I called Mike, freaking out. He admitted he hadn't taken the post down right away but had done it eventually. It was too late. Whoever saw the original post was serious about collecting the bounty. That's when I realized this wasn't just a joke gone wrong, it was a nightmare. I installed security cameras, changed my locks, and even thought about moving. But how do you escape a shadowy figure from the darkest corners of the internet? Every day feels like a ticking clock, waiting for them to strike. So here I am, Reddit, living in constant fear, wondering if today will be the day someone tries to collect the bounty. I'm at my wit's end and don't know what to do. Has anyone else experienced something like this? How do you protect yourself from a threat you can't see? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Hey everyone, back with an update. Things have gotten even crazier and I honestly don't know what to do anymore. I'm scared out of my mind. So a few days after my last post, I was leaving work late. The parking lot was almost empty. As I walked to my car, I saw someone standing a few rows away, just kind of hanging around. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was probably nothing. But then, as I got closer to my car, this person started moving towards me. Not fast, but definitely heading my way. I started to freak out, fumbling with my keys. I managed to unlock my car and jump inside just as this person reached me. They banged on my window and yelled something, but I didn't stick around to hear what. I reversed out of there so fast, almost hitting another car. I didn't stop until I got to a busy gas station. My heart was racing, and I called the police again. They came to the gas station and took my statement, but without any solid evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They told me to be extra careful and change up my routine. It's so hard to relax when you feel like someone's always watching you. I decided to take a few days off work, thinking staying home would be safer. But boy, was I wrong. The first night at home, I was trying to watch some TV and forget about everything. Around midnight, I heard noises near the back door, like someone was trying to break in. My heart sank. I turned off the lights and snuck into the kitchen to see what was going on. There was someone at the back door, messing with the lock. I grabbed my phone and called 911, whispering to the operator. The person outside started yanking on the door handle, and I was terrified they'd get in. The operator kept me calm and said the police were on their way. I hid behind the kitchen counter with a kitchen knife just in case. Finally, I saw police lights outside, and the person took off, jumping over the back fence. The police got there a few minutes later, but the person was long gone. They looked around but didn't find anyone. That was it for me. I couldn't stay in my own home anymore. I packed a bag and went to stay with my parents for a while. They live a few towns over, and I hoped that would be enough to keep me safe. I called Mike again, begging him to do whatever he could to fix this. He felt awful and promised to look into how to get me off these dark web hit lists. Now I'm just trying to lay low and stay safe. It's insane to think this all started as a stupid joke. I'm living in constant fear, and I have no idea what to do next. If anyone has advice or has dealt with something like this, please share. I really need help. I'll update you if anything changes. Thanks for reading and for all the support. Hey everyone, here's an update. Things have only gotten worse, and now I'm paying the price for my friend's stupid joke. I'm on the run, trying to stay hidden and safe. After moving to my parents' place, I thought things would calm down, but it didn't. I still felt like someone was watching me, and every noise made me jump. I didn't want to put my parents in danger, so I decided to leave and go off the grid. I bought a couple of burner phones and a cheap laptop, all paid for in cash. I used these to stay in touch and do some research on how to stay hidden. It's like living in a spy movie, but it's way more stressful and scary. I've been moving around, staying in different motels, never staying in one place for more than a couple of days. I use cash for everything and avoid places with security cameras. It's exhausting and lonely, but it feels safer this way. To check my email and browse the web, I go to public libraries and internet cafes. It's not ideal, but I don't want to leave a digital trail. Every time I log in, I feel like someone's watching me. Mike's been trying to help, but there's only so much he can do. He's digging into the dark web, trying to find a way to get the hit called off. So far, no luck. He feels terrible about everything. I know he didn't mean for this to happen, but I'm living a nightmare because of his joke. The police have been in touch, but without solid leads, they can't do much. They've given me advice on how to stay safe, but it's mostly stuff I'm already doing. They suggested I consider changing my identity, but that's complicated and risky. I'm trying to stay positive, but it's hard. Every day is a struggle, and I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if today will be the day someone finds me. So, that's where I'm at. Living on the run, using burner phones and computers, and trying to stay one step ahead. It's a miserable way to live, but at least I'm still alive. If anyone has advice or has been through something like this, please let me know. I need all the help I can get. Hey everyone, here's another update. Things have taken a weird turn and I did something I never thought I'd do. Living on the run has been a nightmare. I'm always looking over my shoulder and the stress is getting to me. I couldn't keep living like this. I was so angry at Mike for putting me in this mess, so I decided to do the same thing to him. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but I went back on the dark web and put a bounty on Mike's head, just like he did to me. I posted all his info. I wanted him to understand how serious this is and feel some of the fear I've been living with. But I'm not heartless. I warned him first. I called Mike and told him exactly what I did. At first, he thought I was joking, but when he realized I was serious, he freaked out. I told him he needed to experience what I've been going through, even if just for a little while. Mike was terrified. He asked why I'd do something like this, and I told him I needed him to understand. I needed him to feel the same fear and paranoia. He begged me to take it down, but I said he needed to deal with it for a bit. I promised to take it down eventually, just like he promised me. But I wanted him to sweat first. Now Mike is on the run too. He's living with the same fear and anxiety I've been dealing with. We talk every day, trying to figure out a way to end this nightmare for both of us. It's messed up, but it feels like the only way to make him understand how serious this is. I don't know if what I did was right, but I was desperate. I needed him to get it. Maybe together we can figure out a way to fix this. We're both in the same boat now, and maybe that's what it takes to solve this mess. Hey everyone, here's the last update. Things have gotten really bad and I need to share what's been going on. After I put the bounty on Mike, he was terrified at first. But then, he got really mad. He called me, yelling about how I betrayed him, and how he couldn't believe I'd do something like that. He said I went too far, even though I just wanted him to understand what I've been dealing with. Now, he's not talking to me. He blocked me on everything, and I haven't heard from him in days. He's probably dealing with the mess I put him in, just like I had to. I thought it would make him understand, but now we're both just angry and scared. Looking back, this whole thing has been a nightmare. It all started with a stupid joke, and now it's ruined our friendship and put both our lives in danger. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that the dark web is no place to mess around. It's full of dangerous people, and nothing good comes from it. Also, be careful who you call your friends. I never thought Mike would put me in this kind of situation, but here we are. Sometimes the people you trust the most can hurt you in ways you never imagined. I'm trying to find a way out of this mess and hoping Mike does too. I don't know if our friendship will ever recover, but I've learned some hard lessons. Thanks for all the support and advice. Stay safe, and stay away from the dark web and friends who don't take your safety seriously. That's it for now. Take care, everyone. Hey everyone, I wanted to share a creepy experience that happened to me and my best friend Jake. It all started on a boring Friday night. We were just hanging out in my room, surfing the internet like we always do. We were both into weird stuff and like to explore the darker corners of the web for fun. I know, not the smartest idea, but we were just curious. Jake is really good with computers and knows how to find the most hidden websites. That night he suggested we check out the dark web. We had done it a few times before, but we usually stuck to safer parts. This time, though, Jake was determined to find something really spooky. After a while of clicking through random links, we found this site that looked different. It had a black background with creepy red text. The title was Spirits and Shadows, Rare Occult Items for the Brave. We were immediately intrigued. This was exactly the kind of thing we were looking for. We clicked the link and the page loaded slowly. It felt like it took forever, adding to the suspense. When it finally opened, we saw a bunch of creepy items, cursed dolls, haunted mirrors, and other strange stuff. But what really caught our eye was the section on Ouija boards. They had several different designs, each one looking more sinister than the last. One board stood out to us. It was made of dark wood, with weird symbols carved into it. The planchette was a piece of glass that seemed to glow faintly. The description said it was an authentic 19th century Ouija board, used by renowned spiritualists. The price was pretty high, but we had some money saved up and decided to buy it. The site promised quick and discreet delivery. Sure enough, the package arrived 2 days later. It was a plain box with no markings, which made it even creepier. We opened it and found the board wrapped in cloth. As soon as we saw it, we felt a chill. Something about it just felt wrong. That night, we decided to try it out. We set up the board in my living room, lit some candles, and dimmed the lights. We placed our fingers on the planchette and started asking questions. At first, nothing happened, but then the planchette started to move. I thought Jake was messing with me, but he looked just as freaked out as I was. The planchette spelled out yes when we asked if anyone was there. My heart was pounding. We asked who it was, and it spelled out I am lost. That gave me goosebumps. We asked how we could help, and it replied, find me. Before we could ask anything else, the candles flickered and a cold breeze swept through the room. The planchette flew off the board and hit the wall. We jumped back, totally scared. We decided to stop and put the board away, but the weird feeling stayed with us. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing whispers and felt like something was watching me. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The next morning, Jake called me. He sounded freaked out and asked if I had felt anything strange. I told him about my sleepless night, and he said he had the same experience. We both knew we had messed up. Over the next few days, things got worse. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and we constantly felt like we were being watched. Objects in my house started moving to different places. I would leave my keys on the table and find them on the floor. It was like someone was playing tricks on us. The worst part was the dreams. Every night I had the same nightmare. I was in a dark place, hearing whispers and seeing shadows. I would wake up in a panic, drenched in sweat. Jake had similar dreams, and it was starting to drive us crazy. One evening I found a note under my door. It was written in shaky handwriting and said, "Help me." I knew it wasn't from Jake, and no one else had been in my house. I felt a wave of fear wash over me. We had let something into our lives, and it wasn't going away. We tried everything to get rid of the bad energy. We burned sage, recited prayers, and even looked up rituals online. Nothing worked. The feeling of dread kept getting stronger, and we felt like we were losing our minds. One night I heard tapping on my window. I was too scared to move at first, but then I gathered the courage to look. There was nothing there, but the tapping continued. It was like someone was trying to get my attention. I knew we couldn't keep living like this. Jake and I decided to confront whatever we had summoned. We planned one last session with the Ouija board, hoping to get some answers and make it all stop. We were scared, but we felt like we had no other choice. That's where I'll leave it for now. I'll share what happened next soon, but trust me, it gets even crazier. If you're thinking about messing with a Ouija board, take my advice and don't. It's not worth it. Hey everyone. Picking up from where I left off, things went from creepy to downright terrifying after that first Ouija board session. About a week after we first used the board, I was home alone one night. I was just chilling in the living room, watching TV, trying not to think about all the weird stuff that had been happening. Suddenly, I smelled something burning. At first, I thought maybe I'd left the stove on, but when I checked, everything was off. The smell was getting stronger, so I started to panic. I ran around the house trying to figure out where it was coming from. Then I saw smoke coming from under my bedroom door. My heart was racing as I threw open the door and saw flames climbing up the side of my bed. The room was filled with smoke. I sprinted to the kitchen, grabbed the fire extinguisher, and ran back to my room. I sprayed the flames until they were out, but it felt like forever. The room was a disaster. My bed was burnt, and everything was covered in soot. As I stood there, coughing and trying to catch my breath, I noticed the Ouija board on the floor. It was right where the fire had started, and it didn't look damaged at all. I called Jake immediately. He came over and we sat in the living room, trying to process what had happened. I asked him, "Do you think it's the board?" Jake nodded, looking as freaked out as I felt. I don't know what else it could be. We didn't have any problems until we used it. We decided we had to get rid of it. We wrapped the board in some old cloth, took it to the backyard, and made a small fire pit. We tossed the board in and watched it burn. For a moment we felt a weird sense of relief, like maybe things would go back to normal. But then there was this loud crack, like a gunshot. The fire flared up and everything went quiet. Jake and I just stared at each other, scared out of our minds. We put out the fire and went back inside, hoping that burning the board would solve everything. That night, we were on edge, jumping at every little noise. Eventually, Jake went home and I tried to get some sleep. The next day, I checked the damage in my room. The smell of smoke was still there, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we had messed up big time. I started researching more about Ouija boards and found tons of stories from people who had similar experiences. It seemed like messing with the supernatural was way more dangerous than we thought. Jake and I decided to keep an eye on each other and stay in touch. We hoped that burning the board had closed whatever door we had opened. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. We had let something dark into our lives, and it wasn't going to leave without a fight. I'll update you all soon. Hey everyone. So after we burned the Ouija board, I hoped things would calm down, but they didn't. It actually got worse. A couple of nights later, I woke up in the middle of the night because my back was hurting. At first I thought maybe I had slept in a weird position or something. But when I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, I saw these red scratches on my back. They were fresh and stung like crazy. It looked like something had clawed me while I was sleeping. I freaked out and called Jake right away. He came over as soon as he could. We sat in my kitchen trying to figure out what was going on. I showed him the scratches, and he looked really scared. "Dude, this is messed up," he said. "Do you think it's because of the board?" I nodded. I don't know what else it could be. We burned it, but maybe that wasn't enough. We decided to look up more ways to protect ourselves. We found some tips online, like putting salt around the house and saying certain prayers. We were desperate, so we tried everything. That night, I made a circle of salt around my bed and said the prayers we found. I felt a little silly, but I was willing to try anything at that point. I went to bed, hoping I wouldn't wake up with more scratches. The next morning, I woke up and checked my back. No new scratches, but the old ones still hurt. I called Jake to tell him the good news, and he was relieved too. We kept up our new routine, hoping things would get better, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. Every little noise made me jump, and I started having trouble sleeping. The scratches didn't come back, but the sense of dread stayed with me. I felt like we were being haunted, and I didn't know how to make it stop. That's all for now. I'll update you guys soon with what happened next. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone. So nothing was working and I was still feeling super creeped out at home. I decided to stay at Jake's place for a bit, thinking maybe it would help. He was cool with it, and we figured being together might make things less scary. The first night I stayed at Jake's, I woke up in the middle of the night with that same weird feeling. I checked my back, and, yep, there were fresh scratches. It was like whatever this thing was, it had followed me. Jake saw the scratches and looked really worried. "This is crazy, it's like it's following you," he said. We tried to keep ourselves busy, staying up late, watching TV, playing video games, anything to distract us. But every night the same stuff happened. I'd wake up with new scratches and we'd hear strange noises like whispers or soft tapping on the walls. One night Jake even decided to sleep in the same room with me, hoping it might help. But it didn't. He kept saying he felt cold spots and had nightmares. One time we both woke up at the same time because we heard a weird noise coming from the corner of the room. There was nothing there, but we both felt like something was. We were both really tired and scared. Nothing we tried seemed to work, and it was starting to get to us. We talked about maybe getting some professional help, like a paranormal investigator, but we had no idea how to find one, or if it would even help. Staying at Jake's didn't make a difference. The creepy stuff kept happening, and we were out of ideas. The constant fear was wearing us down, and we didn't know what to do next. I'll update you all soon. Thanks for sticking with me through this. Hey everyone, so things didn't get better at Jake's place. The creepy stuff kept happening, and we were getting really desperate. We decided to ask a priest for help, hoping maybe a blessing would work. We found a local priest and told him everything. He was nice and agreed to come over to bless both our places. He brought holy water and said prayers in each room. While he was there, we felt a bit better, thinking this might finally solve our problem. But that night, I woke up with more scratches. The whispers and tapping sounds were still there. It felt like nothing had changed. I called Jake, and he said the same stuff was still happening at his place too. We were completely lost. The priest's blessing didn't work, and we had no idea what to do next. The constant fear and strange occurrences were wearing us down. We were both exhausted and scared all the time. Right now, I'm really scared and don't know what to do. We've tried everything we could think of, and nothing has helped. I'm sharing this in hopes that someone out there has gone through something similar and can offer some advice. Thanks for reading and for your support. See you maybe soon again. Before I dive into the story, I just want to mention that all of these are just conspiracy theories, and nothing is proven yet. Thanks for your understanding. Let's get into the story. It all started one night when I was super bored and decided to check out the dark web. I've always been curious about it, like everyone talks about how mysterious and dangerous it is. So I thought, why not? I made sure my computer was secure, used a special browser, and followed all the safety tips I could find. At first, it was kinda dull. I saw some sketchy marketplaces, intense political forums, and hacker communities. Interesting, but nothing too crazy. Then I found this forum called The Real Truth. The people there had usernames like Watcher and The Eye. The discussions were wild, all about secret societies and global conspiracies. The word Illuminati popped up a lot, and there was this idea about a new world order. It felt like I'd stepped into a different world. One thread really caught my eye. Proof of Illuminati control, real documents inside. It had links to supposed leaked documents and videos. As I read through it, I couldn't believe how detailed it was. They talked about the Illuminati controlling world governments, having influence in the entertainment industry, and being involved in things like various wars. What freaked me out was the amount of detail. There were names, dates, and places that seemed too specific to be made up. I downloaded a few documents out of curiosity. Most were dense and full of jargon, but one was a list of celebrities supposedly in the Illuminati. According to this, these celebrities used their fame to spread the society's symbols and messages. It included musicians, actors, and even some politicians. I kept reading and found another thread titled Population Control, the Illuminati's Plan. This one was even more disturbing. It claimed that the Illuminati wanted to reduce the global population to maintain control. The thread detailed various methods they supposedly used, including orchestrating pandemics and promoting wars. It was terrifying and left me with a sick feeling. The more I read, the more unsettled I got. There were discussions about mind control, where the Illuminati allegedly used media and technology to influence public opinion and behavior subtly. People shared their theories about hidden messages in TV shows, news broadcasts, and even ads. I found myself questioning everything I'd ever seen on TV. One particularly creepy post described secret meetings where influential figures from politics, business, and entertainment supposedly gathered to discuss and plan their strategies. The poster claimed to have inside information and described these meetings in vivid detail, right down to the eerie rituals they performed. I was about to close my browser when a new thread popped up. Alien Connections, the Illuminati's Darkest Secret. My curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on it. The thread was filled with bizarre claims about the Illuminati being in contact with extraterrestrial beings. It proposed that they were using advanced alien technology to achieve their goals and maintain power. There were grainy photos and videos that supposedly showed meetings between Illuminati members and alien beings. It sounded too crazy to be true, but the fact that it was discussed so earnestly made it all the more unsettling. By now it was well past midnight and my head was spinning with all the information I had consumed. I decided it was time to call it a night. I shut down my computer and tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had uncovered something I wasn't supposed to see. As I lay in bed, I heard a strange noise outside my window. It was probably just a cat or the wind, but in my heightened state of paranoia, it felt like something more sinister. I got up and checked the locks on all my doors and windows, just to be safe. That night, I had a series of vivid nightmares. I dreamt of shadowy figures watching me, of secret meetings in darkened rooms, and of alien beings with cold, emotionless eyes. I woke up several times, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. In the morning, I decided to take a break from the dark web, but the things I had read stayed with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the world than I had ever imagined. The dark web had opened my eyes to a realm of conspiracy and fear, and there was no going back. So I couldn't stay away from that forum. The next night I logged back in. I was just too curious, you know. There was a new thread called Illuminati Symbols Everywhere, Proof in Plain Sight. It talked about how the Illuminati uses symbols to show their control. People posted pictures of the all-seeing eye on the US dollar bill, in company logos, and even in music videos. It was kind of creepy to think these symbols might be all around us. Then I saw another post about the entertainment industry. This one claimed that lots of celebrities are part of the Illuminati. They use their fame to spread the society's messages. There were video clips showing hidden symbols in music videos. Some seemed like a stretch, but others were pretty convincing. I kept reading and found a post about how the Illuminati controls the financial system. It said they have a hand in major banks and financial institutions, manipulating economies and markets to benefit their goals. It made me think about all the economic crises and wonder if there was some truth to it. One thread that really got to me was about population control. It claimed the Illuminati orchestrated events like pandemics to reduce the global population. It talked about how they spread diseases and created wars to cause mass casualties. It was a terrifying thought, and I felt a chill as I read it. There was more about their mind control tactics. The post said the Illuminati uses media to influence how people think and act. There were stories about hidden messages in TV shows and news broadcasts designed to shape public opinion. It made me question everything I see on TV. Then I found a post about secret meetings. It described how influential people from different sectors get together to plan their strategies. The details were vivid, with descriptions of dark rooms and strange rituals. It sounded like something from a movie, but the way it was written made it seem real. One of the most bizarre threads was about the alleged alien connections. It claimed the Illuminati was in contact with extraterrestrial beings and used advanced alien technology to keep their power. There were grainy photos and videos that supposedly showed these interactions. It seemed crazy, but by now, I was willing to believe almost anything. As I kept reading, I noticed that many posts were from users who claimed to have inside information. They talked about things in such detail that it was hard not to take them seriously. I found myself getting more and more absorbed, even though it all seemed so unbelievable. I stayed up late, reading thread after thread. The more I read, the more paranoid I became. I started to feel like I was being watched, like someone knew I was uncovering these secrets. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see someone in the dark. Finally, I forced myself to shut down my computer and go to bed. But even then, I couldn't escape the feeling that I had stumbled onto something big, something I wasn't supposed to know. I lay awake for hours, my mind racing with all the information I had taken in. In the morning, I felt exhausted and uneasy. I tried to go about my day as usual, but the theories I had read kept playing over and over in my mind. It was like a puzzle I couldn't put down. I needed to know more, even if it meant diving deeper into the darkness. So the next night I went back to the forum. I couldn't help myself. I was hooked. I found a thread called Secret Meetings of the Illuminati. This one described how influential people from politics, business, and entertainment get together to plan their strategies. The details were so vivid, it was like the person writing it had been there. They talked about these meetings happening in dark rooms, with everyone wearing masks and performing strange rituals. It sounded like something out of a horror movie, but the way it was written made it seem real. I couldn't stop reading. There was another post about the financial system. It said the Illuminati controls major banks and financial institutions. They manipulate economies and markets to benefit their goals. It made me think about all the economic crises and wonder if there was some truth to it. I also read more about the population control theories. This one claimed the Illuminati orchestrated events like pandemics to reduce the global population. They spread diseases and create wars to cause mass casualties. It was a terrifying thought, and I felt a chill as I read it. Then there was more about mind control. The post said the Illuminati uses media to influence how people think and act. There were stories about hidden messages in TV shows and news broadcasts designed to shape public opinion. It made me question everything I see on TV. One of the most bizarre threads was about the alleged alien connections. It claimed the Illuminati was in contact with extraterrestrial beings and used advanced alien technology to keep their power. There were grainy photos and videos that supposedly showed these interactions. It seemed crazy, but by now I was willing to believe almost anything. As I kept reading, I noticed that many posts were from users who claimed to have inside information. They talked about things in such detail that it was hard not to take them seriously. I found myself getting more and more absorbed, even though it all seemed so unbelievable. I stayed up late, reading thread after thread. The more I read, the more paranoid I became. I started to feel like I was being watched, like someone knew I was uncovering these secrets. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see someone in the dark. By now I was really hooked. I had to know more. That forum was all I could think about, so that night I went back to see what else I could find. There was a new thread called Exposing the Puppet Masters. This one listed names of politicians, business leaders, and even some royals who were supposedly part of the Illuminati. There were photos of these people at exclusive events and private meetings. It was creepy to see how all these powerful people might be connected. Another post talked about world events being planned by the Illuminati. It suggested that wars and political problems were all part of their plan to keep control. The idea was that these events were distractions to keep us from seeing what was really going on. It made me wonder about all the things happening in the world, and if they were really just part of a bigger plan. Then I found a thread about mind control. It said the Illuminati uses technology to influence how we think and act. They mentioned subliminal messages in TV shows and ads, and even social media algorithms designed to control us. It made me question how much of what I see every day is really my own choice. One of the most disturbing threads was about experiments. It claimed the Illuminati did secret experiments on people without them knowing. These experiments were supposed to test new mind control techniques and even genetic changes. There were stories from people who believed they were victims of these experiments. Their stories were detailed and really creepy. There were also posts about secret bases where these experiments and meetings happened. These places were always in remote locations and heavily guarded. Some users posted satellite images and maps showing where these places might be. It was scary to think there could be entire facilities dedicated to such dark activities. Then there was a thread about the New World Order. This one talked about the Illuminati's plan for a one-world government. They said global organizations and agreements were steps toward this goal. The idea was that we were all being led into a future where freedom wouldn't exist. It was a chilling thought. As I read more, I noticed something weird. Some of the users who posted the most detailed information started to disappear. Their accounts were deactivated, and their posts were gone. It felt like they had been silenced. This made me even more paranoid. What if they were getting too close to the truth? That night, I heard noises outside my window again. This time, it sounded like footsteps. I froze, listening. The footsteps stopped, and I peeked out, but saw nothing. My heart was pounding. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I decided to take a break from the forum. I needed to clear my head. But even when I tried to stay away, I couldn't stop thinking about everything I'd read. The theories, the connections, the disappearances. It all felt too real. When I finally went back to the forum, it had changed. Some threads were gone, and a few active users hadn't posted in days. It was like the forum itself was being watched and controlled. I posted a few questions, asking if anyone else noticed the changes, but got no replies. That's when I realized I had to be careful. Maybe I had gotten too deep. I decided to save everything I found, screenshots, documents, and notes. I didn't know what I was going to do with it all, but I felt like I needed to protect myself. I still can't shake the feeling that I've uncovered something dangerous. The more I learn, the more questions I have. I don't know if I'll ever get to the bottom of it, but I can't stop now. This journey has changed how I see the world, and there's no going back. So I went back one last time, looking for answers. I found a thread called The Ultimate Truth, which tried to tie everything together. It covered everything I had read about the Illuminati, their control over governments, influence in entertainment, manipulation of the financial system, population control, mind control, secret experiments, and even alien connections. Reading through it, I realized that all these things were just conspiracy theories. None of it was proven. Everything was based on speculation and coincidences. Yet despite the lack of solid evidence, it all made a strange kind of sense to me. The connections and patterns felt too real to ignore. But I understood that everyone needs to decide for themselves what to believe and trust. After all this, my biggest takeaway is to be cautious. The dark web is full of unknown dangers, and it's easy to get lost in these theories. For your own safety, it's better to stay away from those dark corners of the internet. My journey down this rabbit hole has made me more paranoid and fearful, and I don't want that for anyone else. Stay safe, everyone. Remember, not everything you read online is true. It's important to question things, but don't let the questions take over your life. I've always been into conspiracy theories. You know, those late-night YouTube videos and endless scrolling on Reddit. It started as a fun way to pass the time, but one cold December night, I found something that changed everything for me. It all started with a mention of the Montauk Project in a random Reddit post. It was a typical Friday night, and I was home alone, browsing through Reddit. I stumbled across a thread about conspiracy theories, and someone mentioned the Montauk Project. They linked to an old hidden forum on the dark web. I was curious, so I fired up my Tor browser and followed the links through a maze of pages until I found myself on this old-school website. It was like stepping back in time, just plain text, no fancy design. The forum was called Project Phoenix. It was full of threads about secret government projects like MKUltra and Area 51. But the one that caught my eye was titled Montauk Project, Eyewitness Accounts and Documents. I clicked on it, not knowing what I was getting myself into. The first post was by a user named The Gatekeeper. He said he was a former military officer who worked at Montauk Air Force Base in the 1980s. His story was long and detailed, filled with personal stories and technical terms that made it sound real. He said Montauk was where the government did some of the most messed up experiments ever, like mind control and time travel. The Gatekeeper described a piece of equipment called the Montauk Chair. It was supposed to boost psychic powers. He painted a creepy picture of a plain chair covered in wires and screens, with a strange interface where you put your hands. It gave me chills just reading about it. He shared a particularly disturbing story about a young boy, no older than 12, brought in one night. The boy was terrified, crying, and begging to go home. They strapped him into the Montauk Chair and started their experiment, trying to send his mind to a different time. The boy screamed and shook for hours, the machines making weird noises. Then everything went quiet. The boy slumped in the chair, and when they unstrapped him, he stared blankly, speaking in a low voice about events from decades ago, places he'd never been, and people long dead. It was like something else was talking through him. The way the Gatekeeper described it, I could almost hear the boy's haunting voice in my head. I couldn't stop reading. I spent the whole night going through the thread, which had hundreds of posts. Other users shared their stories and pieces of information, each more disturbing than the last. One user, Montauk Survivor, claimed he was a test subject. His posts were all over the place, filled with broken sentences and jumbled memories. He talked about being locked in a dark room, hearing strange noises and feeling like he was being watched all the time. The more I read, the more I felt like I was uncovering something I shouldn't know. The stories had too many matching details to be made up. It was like peeling back layers of a hidden secret, one that people in power wanted to stay buried. As the night went on, I found a sub-thread called Evidence. Here, users shared photos, documents, and audio recordings supposedly smuggled out of the Montauk base. Most of the photos were blurry, but one stood out, a grainy black and white picture of the Montauk Chair. It looked exactly as the Gatekeeper described, a regular chair with a bunch of wires and electrodes in a creepy, dimly lit room. It made my skin crawl. The documents were even scarier. They were scanned copies of official-looking reports detailing various experiments. The language was vague and technical, but the implications were horrifying. One report talked about temporal displacement and psychic augmentation, with notes on the mental and physical state of the subjects. It was written in a cold, detached tone, like they were talking about lab rats, not people. Then there were the audio recordings. They were old and crackly, but you could hear snippets of conversations between scientists, the muffled screams of subjects, and the eerie hum of machines. Listening to them felt like eavesdropping on a nightmare, each sound a glimpse into a world of pain and fear. By the time morning came, I was deeply disturbed but also hooked. I knew I was getting into dangerous territory, learning secrets that powerful people wanted to keep hidden, but I couldn't stop. The more I learned, the more I needed to know. This was just the beginning. The deeper I went, the darker and more twisted the story became. The Montauk Project was just the start, and what lay beneath was a darkness that threatened to change everything I thought I knew about reality. After that first night, I couldn't stop thinking about the Montauk Project. Every free moment I had, I was back on that forum, reading through posts and trying to piece everything together. It wasn't long before I started seeing patterns and connecting dots that led me even deeper into this mystery. One night, I found a post by someone named Truth Seeker 84. They claimed to have documents linking the Montauk Project to other secret experiments across the country. According to them, Montauk was just one part of a much bigger operation. They mentioned places like Camp Hero, Brookhaven National Laboratory, and even some abandoned schools and hospitals. Truth Seeker 84's post had links to more files, but they were encrypted. I had to learn how to decrypt them, which was a whole new level of paranoia. The files included blueprints, experiment logs, and lists of names. Many names were blacked out, but a few were readable, and some I recognized from the news, missing persons mostly. It was like finding pieces of a very scary puzzle. One document that really freaked me out was a log of an experiment called Project Rainbow. It described tests on teleportation and time travel using massive electromagnetic fields. The results were inconsistent and often disastrous. Subjects would come back with severe mental and physical issues, describing strange visions and feeling like they had been gone for years, even though only minutes had passed. Another creepy find was a set of interview transcripts with surviving test subjects. These people talked about being taken from their homes, drugged, and subjected to weird and painful experiments. One man remembered being put in a tank filled with a strange liquid that made him feel like he was floating in space. He saw flashes of different times and places, some familiar and some completely strange. His descriptions matched up with what other survivors had said. The more I read, the more I found mentions of something called the Montauk Boys. This was supposedly a group of kids taken from the streets or orphanages and used in experiments. They were trained to develop psychic abilities like remote viewing and mind control. Some posts even suggested these boys were being groomed to become sleeper agents, with their memories wiped clean after each session. One night, while going through another batch of decrypted files, I found a series of emails between high-ranking officials. They discussed moving the Montauk experiments to a more secure location because of increasing public interest and potential leaks. The emails were full of bureaucratic language, but the message was clear. They were worried about being exposed. As I read on, I found mentions of something called the Phoenix Program. This seemed to be a continuation of the Montauk Project, aiming to perfect the techniques they had been developing. The tone of the emails was urgent and paranoid, with constant references to operational security and contingency plans. By now, I was feeling the pressure. My sleep was filled with nightmares about shadowy figures and endless dark corridors. During the day, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was like the paranoia was seeping into my everyday life. But I couldn't stop. I had to know more. One of the last things I found that night was a set of coordinates and a cryptic message. Come see for yourself. The coordinates pointed to a remote area near Montauk. It was a bold move, but I knew I had to go there. I needed to see if any of this was real, or if it was just an elaborate hoax. So I made plans to visit Montauk. I packed a bag, made sure my phone was fully charged, and told a friend where I was going, just in case. As I drove through the night, the reality of what I was doing started to sink in. This wasn't just some internet mystery anymore. I was about to step into the heart of it. The drive was long and eerie. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, but every time I looked in the rearview mirror, there was nothing but empty road. The anticipation built with every mile, and by the time I reached Montauk, my nerves were shot. I parked near the coordinates and took a deep breath. This was it. I was about to uncover the truth behind the Montauk Project, and there was no turning back. When I finally got to Montauk, it was really quiet. The coordinates led me to a spot near Camp Hero, which is an old military base. The place looked abandoned, with rusty fences and old no trespassing signs. It was late afternoon, and the sun was setting, making everything look even creepier. I parked my car and started walking towards the base. My heart was pounding. I kept looking around, expecting someone to stop me. But there was no one, just the wind and the occasional rustle of leaves. I found a hole in the fence and slipped through. Inside, it looked like nobody had been there for years. There were old buildings, some with broken windows, others boarded up. I had a flashlight with me, so I turned it on and started looking around. As I walked through the base, I found a building that seemed more intact than the others. The door was slightly open, so I pushed it and stepped inside. The air smelled musty, like mold and old paper. The first room I entered was empty except for some old furniture covered in dust. I went deeper into the building and found more interesting stuff. In one room, there were old filing cabinets full of documents. Most of them were boring, but a few caught my eye. They had the same kind of language and references I had seen in the files online. Then I found a staircase leading down to what looked like a basement. The door at the bottom was heavy and metal, with a big, rusty lock. Surprisingly, the lock was broken, so I pushed the door open. Inside, it was dark and cold. My flashlight flickered, which was pretty creepy. The basement was like a maze of rooms and hallways. In one room, I found old lab equipment and strange machines. It looked like something from a sci-fi movie. There were chairs with restraints, electrodes, and wires everywhere. This must have been where they did their experiments. I took out my phone and started taking pictures, trying to document everything. Then I heard a noise. It was faint, like a whisper, but it made me freeze. I turned off my flashlight and stood still, listening. The whispering continued and seemed to be getting closer. Panicking, I hurried back through the maze of rooms and up the stairs. I didn't stop until I was outside, back in the fading light. I took a moment to catch my breath and calm down. I didn't know if the whispers were real or just my imagination, but I didn't want to stick around to find out. I made my way back to the car, constantly looking over my shoulder. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Even when I got home, that feeling lingered. I reviewed the pictures I had taken and started organizing the documents I had found. Over the next few days, I went through everything carefully. The documents and photos confirmed a lot of what I had read online. There were references to mind control experiments, psychic training, and even time travel tests. The more I learned, the more real it all seemed. I shared some of my findings on the forum, and other users were just as shocked as I was. Some of them encouraged me to go back and get more evidence, but I wasn't sure if I had the courage to do it. The visit to Montauk had really shaken me, and I wasn't sure how much more I could handle. After my trip to Montauk, I took a break for a few days. I needed to clear my head, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The mystery kept bugging me. I decided to go back online and look for more clues. I went back to the Project Phoenix forum and posted some of the pictures I took. The responses were fast and intense. Some people were excited and wanted more, while others told me to be careful. One user, Deep Dive 123, sent me a private message. They said they had more encrypted files and offered to share them. Of course, I wanted to see them. Deep Dive 123 sent me a link to a hidden folder with more documents, videos, and audio files. I spent hours decrypting and going through them. What I found was even more disturbing than before. One document talked about an experiment with electromagnetic fields and psychic abilities. It described how they put people in a chamber and exposed them to high levels of electromagnetic radiation to boost their psychic powers. Some people reported increased abilities, but others had severe mental and physical side effects. Another file was a video from the 1980s. It showed a young boy, maybe 10 years old, strapped to a chair like the one in the photos I found. Scientists were asking him questions and monitoring his responses. The boy looked scared and confused. At one point, he started speaking in a language I didn't recognize. The video ended suddenly, leaving me with more questions. The audio files were the hardest to listen to. They recorded conversations between scientists discussing the experiments in cold, clinical terms. There were also recordings of the subjects during the experiments, their voices filled with fear and confusion. One recording stood out, a subject describing a place that didn't exist in our time. They talked about strange landscapes and beings that sounded like they were from another world. I shared some of these findings on the forum. The reactions were mixed. Some people were shocked, others didn't believe it. Some users suggested going public with the information, but I wasn't sure about that. Others warned me again to be careful, saying people who get too close to the truth often disappear. One night, while I was deep in my research, I got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was calm but firm. They told me to stop what I was doing and delete everything I had found. Before I could respond, they hung up. The call freaked me out. How did they get my number? Who were they? I started feeling paranoid, always looking over my shoulder and checking my phone for signs of hacking. I knew I was in deep, but I couldn't stop now. I had to find out the truth no matter what. I decided to reach out to some journalists anonymously. I shared parts of the information I had gathered. I hoped they could help bring the story to light without exposing myself too much. It was risky, but I felt like I had no choice. As I waited for responses, I kept digging. The Montauk Project, the experiments, the missing people, it was all connected. I just needed to find the final piece of the puzzle. But the closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous it seemed. The secrets of the Montauk Project were deep and dark, and finding them might come at a high price. The days after that call were really tense. I kept my phone on silent and was always looking over my shoulder. It felt like someone was watching me, and the paranoia was getting to me. But I kept going, determined to find out the truth. I finally heard back from one of the journalists I contacted. They were interested in my findings and wanted to meet in person. We met at a busy coffee shop. I brought all my files, photos, and documents with me. The journalist listened carefully as I went through everything, asking questions and taking notes. After our meeting, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. I had handed over all the information, but I still felt uneasy. The journalist promised to look into it and get back to me. Days turned into weeks and I didn't hear anything. I kept checking the forum and sharing updates, but I noticed some of the more active users had gone silent. It was unsettling, but I tried to focus on other things to take my mind off it. One evening, I got an email from the journalist. They thanked me for the information but explained that they couldn't find any solid evidence to back up the claims. The documents, photos, and videos, while interesting, weren't enough to prove anything concrete. I felt both disappointed and relieved. I had spent so much time and energy on this, but in the end, it seemed like it was all just speculation and rumors. The Montauk Project, the experiments, the missing people, it was all just a series of coincidences and stories that people had turned into something more. Looking back, it was clear that I had gotten caught up in the excitement and mystery. The stories were compelling, the evidence seemed real, but without solid proof, it all meant nothing. These were just conspiracy theories. Interesting, sure, but just stories people tell. I decided to step back from the forum and the dark web for a while. I needed to clear my head and focus on things that were real and tangible. The Montauk Project would remain a strange chapter in my life, a reminder of how easy it is to get lost in the search for truth. In the end, I learned a lot about myself and the nature of conspiracies. They can be fascinating and even scary, but without real evidence, they are just stories. This is a warning for anyone who thinks the dark web is just a scary story or a playground for thrill seekers. It's real, and it can mess up your life in ways you can't even imagine. Here's my story. I'm a pretty regular guy. I live in a small town, work a 9-to-5 job, and spend most of my free time gaming or watching Netflix. A few months ago, I stumbled upon some YouTube videos about the dark web. You know, those top 10 scariest things found on the dark web type videos. I got curious and my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to explore a bit, thinking it was all exaggerated. I couldn't have been more wrong. It started innocently enough. I downloaded Tor, got a VPN, and began browsing. Most of it was boring. Forums, marketplaces, nothing too shocking. Then I found a site with a simple black background and a chat box. It didn't have a name, just an IP address. Out of boredom, I entered the chat and said, "Hello." Big mistake. At first, it seemed like a regular chat room with random people talking about tech, sharing weird memes, and discussing conspiracy theories. But then, someone with the username Evil messaged me directly. "Nice to meet you, Michael." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't given my name, I replied, asking who they were and how they knew my name. No response. I tried to brush it off as a lucky guess and logged out, but the unease lingered. The next day, I noticed my computer was acting strange. Programs were opening and closing on their own. My webcam light was on, even though I never used it. I ran a virus scan, but it came up clean. I unplugged my webcam, but that didn't help. A week later, I received a package at my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a USB stick. Against my better judgment, I plugged it into an old laptop, not connected to the internet. It contained a single text file named Instructions. The file read, "You have been chosen. Complete the tasks or face the consequences." I laughed nervously, thinking it was a prank. But then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email." Sure enough, my inbox had a new message from Evil 2. It contained a video file. I hesitated, then clicked play. The video showed surveillance footage of me walking into my house, grocery shopping, even sleeping. Someone had been watching me, and they had my routine down to a T. Panic set in. I called the police, but they couldn't do much without any direct threats or evidence of a crime. I changed all my passwords, installed new security software, and even bought a new computer. For a while, things were quiet. I thought maybe it was over. I was wrong. A month later, things escalated. My social media accounts were hacked, and disturbing posts were made in my name. Posts supporting a cult I'd never heard of, worshipping some dark entity called Nixara. My friends and family were horrified and confused. I received calls and messages asking if I was okay. I tried to explain it was a hack, but the damage was done. People were distancing themselves from me. One night I woke up to the sound of my doorbell ringing incessantly. Groggy and annoyed, I stumbled to the door and opened it. There was no one there, but on my porch was a symbol painted in red, an intricate design with a central eye staring right at me. I quickly washed it away, my hands trembling. I thought of leaving town, but the messages made it clear they knew my every move. "Run, and it gets worse," one read. My life had turned into a nightmare, and there was no waking up. I started receiving strange packages, black candles, bones, cryptic notes written in a language I couldn't understand. Each package was more unsettling than the last. I knew I had to find out more about Nixara and this cult. My only hope was to understand why they had targeted me and how I could make it stop. I spent hours online, diving into forums and obscure websites, trying to piece together any information. Nixara, it seemed, was an ancient entity worshipped by a secretive cult. Their rituals were said to bring power and fortune to their followers, but at a great cost, often involving human sacrifice. Then, one night, as I was deep in my research, my computer screen went black. A single message appeared. "You've been chosen to serve. Prepare yourself." That's when the real terror began. This is just the beginning of my story. Trust me, things only got darker and more twisted from here. I'll update soon with the next part, but for now, be careful out there. The internet is a dark and dangerous place, and you never know who might be watching. Hey everyone, I'm back with part 2. Things got really bad after that last message. I still can't believe everything that happened, but here it goes. After getting that message saying I had been chosen to serve, I was on edge all the time. I barely slept, constantly checking my windows and doors, making sure everything was locked tight. It didn't help much. One night, I was watching TV, trying to distract myself, when I heard a noise from the backyard. It sounded like someone was moving around back there. My heart started racing. I grabbed a flashlight and quietly went to check it out. When I got to the back door, I saw shadows moving near the trees. There were people back there, and they were looking right at my house. I freaked out and called the police. While I was on the phone, I heard a loud crash from the front of the house. I ran to see what it was, and there was a brick lying in my living room with a note attached to it. The note read, "Come outside, Michael, join us or face the consequences." I told the police everything and they promised to send a patrol car. But by the time they arrived, the people in the backyard were gone. The officers did a quick check around the house but didn't find anything. They told me to call if anything else happened and left. I didn't feel safe at all. A couple of nights later, it got even worse. I woke up in the middle of the night to the smell of smoke. My heart pounded as I jumped out of bed and ran to the living room. There, I saw small fires burning in a circle around my house like some kind of ritual. I grabbed a fire extinguisher and managed to put them out. But as soon as I did, I heard chanting from outside. I looked out the window and saw a group of people wearing dark robes, holding candles and chanting in some language I didn't understand. They were standing in a circle, and in the middle they had some kind of altar with strange symbols painted on it. I saw one of them holding a knife, and it was clear they were preparing for something terrible. I tried calling the police again, but this time my phone didn't work. It was dead, even though it had been charging all night. I had no idea what to do. The chanting grew louder, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I had to get out of there. I grabbed my keys and snuck out the back door, hoping they wouldn't see me. As I ran to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw 2 of the cult members running after me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. I finally got the car started and sped off, tires screeching. I drove to a friend's house a few towns over, constantly checking my mirrors to make sure I wasn't being followed. When I got there, I told him everything. He thought I was joking at first, but when he saw how scared I was, he believed me. We stayed up all night trying to figure out what to do. The next day, I went to the police again, this time in my friend's town. I told them everything, showed them the messages, the video, even the burnt patches in my yard. They took me seriously this time and promised to investigate. For now, I'm staying with my friend, trying to lay low. I don't know what the cult wanted to do with me, but it was clear they needed my blood for some evil ritual. I managed to get away this time, but I know they're still out there waiting. I'm scared they'll find me again, but I'm not giving up. That's it for part 2. Things have been really intense, but I'll keep you all updated. Be careful out there and don't mess with things you don't understand. The dark web isn't just a story, it's real and it's dangerous. Hey everyone, back with part 3. Things got even crazier and I need to get this out. So after moving to my friend's house, I thought we were safe. But then I got a text from an unknown number. "We know you're at friend's address." They texted me his address. "Come to us or we'll hurt him." My heart dropped. I showed the message to my friend, and he looked terrified. He didn't ask for any of this, and I couldn't let him get hurt because of me. We quickly packed some essentials and decided to run. We got into my car and started driving with no idea where we were going. We just wanted to get as far away as possible. Every few minutes I checked the rearview mirror, paranoid that someone was following us. My phone kept buzzing with messages, all from the same number, telling me to stop running and face them. I kept ignoring the texts, but my friend was getting more and more anxious. He kept asking what we were going to do, where we were going to go. I didn't have any answers. All I knew was that we had to keep moving. We drove for hours, only stopping for gas and food. We finally ended up at a motel in a town I'd never even heard of. We checked in and I made sure to pay in cash, hoping it would make it harder for them to track us. We stayed in the room, curtains drawn, lights off, whispering our plans. That night, I got another text. "You can't hide forever. We will find you." I didn't sleep at all. My friend and I took turns keeping watch, but every little noise made us jump. The stress was getting to us. My friend kept saying we should go to the police again, but I had a feeling it wouldn't help. These people seemed to be everywhere. The next morning, we decided to move again. We couldn't stay in one place for too long. We packed up and hit the road once more, driving aimlessly. My friend kept asking if we could ever go back to our normal lives. I didn't know what to tell him. I kept thinking about the cult and their threats. I needed to find a way to stop them, but I had no idea how. We were just two guys on the run, up against something way bigger than us. But giving up wasn't an option. I couldn't let them win. We drove through small towns, avoided main roads, and tried to stay off the grid. I knew it was only a matter of time before they found us again. But until then, we had to keep moving. This is all for now. I'll keep you all updated if we are still alive. I'm back with part 4. Things have taken a really bad turn, and I'm seriously freaked out. So my friend and I were staying at this motel, trying to keep a low profile. We were both stressed and tired, but we felt a bit safer there. One evening, I decided to go out and grab some food. My friend wanted to stay in the room to rest. I thought it'd be fine. I'd only be gone for about 30 minutes. I went to a nearby fast food place, grabbed some burgers and drinks, and headed back to the motel. When I got back, I noticed the door was slightly open. My heart started racing. I rushed in, calling out my friend's name, but there was no answer. The room was empty. No sign of a struggle. No sign of him. It was like he had just vanished. I checked the bathroom, under the bed, everywhere. Nothing. His bag was still there, his phone, everything except him. I tried calling his phone, but it was on the nightstand, ringing away. Panic set in. I ran to the motel office and asked if anyone had seen him leave, but the clerk said no. I even asked some of the other guests, but no one had seen anything. I went back to the room, trying to figure out what to do. I searched for any clues, any sign of what might have happened, but there was nothing. It was like he had just disappeared into thin air. I called the police and reported him missing. They came and took my statement, searched the room, and asked a lot of questions. They said they'd do what they could, but I could tell they didn't have much hope. It was like he had just vanished without a trace. I felt sick to my stomach. My friend was missing, and it was my fault. I shouldn't have left him alone. Now, I was more scared than ever. If they could take him without a trace, what could they do to me? I'm still at the motel, waiting for any news from the police. I don't know what to do next. I feel completely lost and alone. I just want my friend back and for this nightmare to end. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I'll keep you all updated. Hey everyone, back with the final part. This has been a long and scary journey, but here it is. After my friend went missing, I knew I couldn't stay in one place anymore. The cult was serious and they could get to anyone close to me. I decided to disappear completely. I booked a flight to a small country on the other side of the world, somewhere I hoped they couldn't find me. I changed everything about myself. I got a new hairstyle, a new name, a completely new identity. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not even my family. I had to cut all ties to keep everyone safe. It's been 6 years since I last saw my friend. I still think about him every day and wonder if he's okay. I never found out what happened to him. The police never got any leads and the case went cold. I feel guilty for not being able to help him, but I had to save myself. Living in a new country has been hard. I'm always looking over my shoulder, always wondering if they'll find me. But so far I've managed to stay hidden. I don't use my real name online, and I stay away from anything that might give away my location. I've started a new life here. I've made new friends, got a job, and tried to move on. But the fear never really goes away. Every time I see a stranger looking at me for too long, my heart races. I don't know if I'll ever feel truly safe again. This is my last update. I wanted to share my story to warn others. The dark web isn't just stories and myths. It's real, and it's dangerous. Be careful what you get involved with, and don't take anything lightly. Thanks for listening, everyone. That's it for part 5. This has been a really intense journey for me, and I hope my story helps someone out there. Take care, everyone.